Hey guys, welcome back again from the AHR Expo out in sunny Las Vegas. We're at Sporland booth C2818, so come visit us for some free giveaways. We're going to talk about system contamination with Dave Thomas, not the one from Wendy's. This one is from Sporland. Go ahead, introduce yourself. Tell us a little bit about yourself and what you do here for Sporland.
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Brett. If you want some free Frosties, let me know. I know a guy, but yeah, my name's David Thomas. I started my career at Sporland in sales. I was a sales engineer in Chicago, covered 4 states: Wisconsin, Illinois, Indiana, and Michigan. So had some great experience in the wholesale aftermarket, calling on contractors, engineers, wholesalers, etc. And now I am a product manager for contaminant controls.
What does that mean?
So contaminant controls is really...
Hey, ladies, come on over. Come on, we're doing some giveaways. Come on over. Free Zoom lock press if you actually enter to win. Come on over.
Brett's hitting on some ladies.
I'm not. If my wife is listening, I'm not. How are we doing, ladies? So you want to talk to this man right here about registering, and we'll get you all set up.
He can scan your badge.
Sorry, ADHD got distracted. Continue, Mr. Thomas.
No, that's all right. Yeah, so contaminant controls is anything that controls contaminants in a refrigeration and air conditioning system.
So what is your feeling on dye? I have a very hated relationship with dye. And some people think it belongs in systems. I truly believe the only thing that belongs in system is refrigeration and oil.
Right. Yep, exactly. So that's kind of the Sporland MO, is that the only thing that should be in a refrigeration system is refrigerant and oil. So anything else we would deem contaminant. So dyes, I see the need. Are you talking specifically about leak detection or?
Yeah, and like I said, regardless it's for leak detection or not, I just don't think it has any place in there. It causes, I think, more blockages and more things than, not bad for the system. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Can cause, acids, if it causes a particular burnout.
Sure.
I don't agree with it.
Yeah. No, I think you're spot on. It also reduces the efficiency of the system too, because when you're going across a heat exchanger, we want to make sure that there's refrigerant in the system, and in that heat exchanger, saturated refrigerant, not anything else, not moisture, not acid, not dyes, whatever. So
yeah, and Sporland has a whole bunch of different things that as far as filtration to actually clean up the systems. You have a gambit of different types of filter dryers. You also have a gambit of different screens that you can put in systems.
Yep.
And they also have lower micron filters. You want to talk a little bit about those that go in the liquid cores?
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, something that I think you're referencing is the optional secondary filter. So traditionally we have a replaceable shell for large systems, specifically supermarket racks typically. And in those shells, we can either put cores, which are the RCA 48 or 100, but I'll just reference 48 size. So RCA, the A stands for acid, so it has more activated alumina to catch the acid in the system. Then we have an RCW. The W stands for water, so it has more molecular sieve in the core, so it, again, retains more moisture, more water. And then we also have the RC4864-HH, and that is that has activated carbon or activated charcoal in that core, and that helps after a burnout when there's high moisture high wax and sludge in the system. That helps with that application. And then in the liquid line, we also have a optional secondary filter, which is a nominal, I believe, 20 micron filter. You can place in the liquid line, replaceable shell, and it filters down a lot of solid particulates.
So what do you guys have to do to combat with wax? Because like when you end up having a waxy system due to like whatever it be, let's just say you had a couple brownouts, which then ended up putting debris in there, which ended up turning into wax. What do you have to combat it? Because sometimes it will cover any kind of component, whether it be check valves, and cause them not to stick properly.
Sure.
What would you do in order to kind of try to clear out some of that stuff, other than just keep changing the filter dryers, keep changing the separator, keep, install suction cores, just for the time being on a commercial supermarket rack. I mean, what else would you want to do?
Yeah, so we have a whole cleanup process. So, we have a bulletin that addresses the entire process. I'll just call out a couple of highlights here. So first is, definitely want to put in some HH cores that has the activated charcoal or activated carbon. That's going to help out a ton. So we typically say run that through the system for 24 to 48 hours, somewhere around there, and then change it out with cores, standard cores, once you're getting to a appropriate acid level. And the way you check that acid is by using a TA-1 oil acid test kit. So use that, and once you see that it's not turning colors from high acid content, then you've done a successful cleanup.
So one of the questions that just came up there: how soon should the cores be changed after first change? If you're asking me, basically after a pressure drop, when you start getting that pressure drop, I would recommend going with maybe a smaller micron screen, as well as actually putting in the screen that actually goes over the center core of the actual Sporlan filter dryer. It provides so much more protection, absorbing that debris. Because what could potentially happen, it could basically go in the bypass where it gets too big of a pressure drop and then opens up. This way, if you're right on top of it, go back the next day, you're right on top of it, and you're making sure you're getting a proper clean out. So, basically when you start getting a pressure drop, that's when I recommend that you start, changing that stuff out.
You're spot on, Brett. Yeah, I want to reinforce something that you said. So, Alex, good question. So one is when you're talking about pressure drop, for a standard filter dryer, we definitely want to see anything less than 5 PSI. When it gets to 5 PSI or greater, that is a major concern.
Yeah.
And we definitely want to change out that filter dryer. Another thing to keep in mind is when you are doing a cleanup process, we do have kind of a higher acceptable range of pressure drop. But once you're seeing 8 to 10 PSI pressure drop across those HH cores, that's when we would want to change out the cores. And typically that takes, depending on the severity of the burnout, between 24 and 72 hours.
When talking about burnouts, one of the things that you do want to be aware is, really what that Deskin is doing. Deskin, if anyone doesn't know, like when you get a new pair of shoes, Deskin is actually what's in that little package they tell you not to eat.
True.
And what that's actually doing is it's absorbing moisture, and it's, they use it for, a multitude of different things. If anyone's ever worked on a Munters unit, it has a Deskin wheel. So what is that doing? It's actually absorbing the moisture. Deskin can be, regenerated, basically utilizing heat. That's why really liquid dryers, if I'm not mistaken, are not recommended for, discharge lines for two reasons. One, sometimes they'll get pulverized where they actually end up putting more debris in the system. And two, if they are collecting moisture, basically when you reheat that, you're releasing that moisture from that filter dryer. So it's really not doing anything. So if you have to, maybe you have a hot gas line that's basically, causing, debris in some of the auxiliary side port connectors for your hot gas, really recommend that you use some kind of element style, like a suction filter style, to make sure that you're not putting that stuff back in the system and you're not pulverizing it, right?
Yeah, no, you're spot on. Yeah, and then something else that you mentioned Silica Gel. That's what's the little packets that come in your shoes that you're not supposed to eat. So we actually, our first generation filter dryers back in the 40s and 50s used that as a desiccant, like you just mentioned. We used Silica Gel as desiccant. Now we use, molecular sieve, activated alumina, activated charcoal, things of that nature. So it's just ironic that, you mentioned that. So.
Well, we got another question up here. Liquid line dryer in the refrigerated case. Do you need to change them every single time upon opening the system?
Yes.
You heard it first. I mean, if the system becomes depressurized, where you actually have air in the system, highly recommended that you do it. If you remember, if we don't have any type of air in the system, if you're actually opening it up and basically you're in a negative pressure or zero PSI, yes, absolutely. Because any kind of moisture, especially with now, most refrigerant systems, they're using polyol ester oil, which is highly hygroscopic. So very recommended that we do change it out.
No, spot on.
Any other system kind of contamination components that you guys utilize? I know you guys have two different style oil filters that you guys currently have. Usually the 303T,
yep.
And you have I know the element number. It's like an OLE1 or something like that.
Yeah, OFE-1.
Thank you.
Yep.
Thank
yeah,
you.
yeah, yeah.
Thank you.
So
Thank you.
yeah, so the OF303, we have that in the flare connections, and then we also have it in the -T model, which uses a pressure tap. And that pressure tap is not for you to put your gauges on it specifically to get pressure. It's actually as an oil drain. So you're supposed to install that upside down so that you have an access port for draining oil in an oil system. And then we also do actually have the BP, I believe, -BP,
Yeah.
which stands for bypass.
Okay.
Yeah, so that it's an optional bypass feature. So once it gets to a certain PSI, I don't know off the top of my head, but once it gets to a certain PSI, it starts bypassing the oil past the filter to prevent pressure drop. Now, that's kind of double-edged sword. We don't want pressure drop, but at the same time, we also want to be collecting those contaminants. So, and then that 303 is a 3-micron, nominal 3-micron oil filter. So it is highly effective and efficient in oil systems.
So one of the things I would highly recommend when doing any kind of oil system, any kind of oil filter typically should be on the discharge line, coming off the oil separator, going into, like if it's a low pressure system, you want it after the oil separator going into the reservoir. The reason why you want that is because if you have a 5-pound differential because of, debris in the system, you're more likely to have more problems if it's on the outlet side of your reservoir, because basically that pressure is now stepped down. Remember, we talked about this multiple times on multiple podcasts where we have to make sure we step down the pressure. We start with the receiver, for the oil separator, which might be at 200 PSI, then get stepped down to, basically utilizing the OCV, which knocks it down usually 20 or 30 pounds heavier than what your actual suction is. And then after that, we go into the compressor. So having a 20-pound differential from going from 200 down to like 70 is less likely to cause a problem than if you would have a 20-pound drop across it, like after it's actually coming out. So my recommendation, I don't know what Sporland's going to tell me. They could tell me that I'm wrong, but I like to see it right on the inlet of the actual of the oil reservoir, right after the oil separator.
No, you're bringing some great points up, Brett. Yeah, I agree.
Okay. I'm just
simple enough.
You're the man. You know about system contamination more than I do, so I'm holding up to you.
We'll see about that.
So, but no, man, I appreciate you coming on for the live stream. Anyone else has any more questions? Hit me up. I'll be here all day next week. All day tomorrow, and I'll be hanging out at AHR and hope to see you guys there. Thanks, guys. Have a good night.
Thanks.